You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 493, our coverage of Pabu, which is the latest episode from The Bad Batch, and one that I think was probably a bit unexpected, or maybe it should have been expected given just how dark and serious the last episode was. This was kind of a contrast, and some really potentially interesting, intriguing things developed in this episode. And we're going to get into all of that, especially the timing of it and the curiosity of why we got this calm. Maybe because there was a storm that's about to come. We'll see. Speaking of the storm, we call him the storm here behind. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know where I'm going with that. Jonesy's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
I am good. I'm doing good. I had a chance to watch this episode a number of times now, and it's grown on me a lot, really.
Yeah, really.
I think the first viewing, I was a little like shocked. Like, what is going on here? What are we doing? With 4 episodes left in this series, it's grown on me. I really enjoy it. And I think the payoff, and we'll get to more on this a little bit later, and probably in our final thoughts. I think the big payoff is going to be just how important and how ominous these next 3 episodes are, which it seems like they're kind of building up towards. But
yeah, it's really actually interesting. They are slyly doing something as well that, I'll kind of point out in my opening thoughts that I didn't expect, but it makes a lot of sense why they're doing it. It's nothing earth-shattering or groundbreaking, but it's curious how they're doing it and why they're doing it.
Right. And before we get into that, we do have a little bit of news that's come up here.
Yeah. Real quick, a shout out over to Instagram user at Sugar Swings, who tagged us in one of her posts. I'm assuming it's her about Imperial travel biscuits. Like, it has a recipe and everything else inspired by, of course, the latest episode from The Mandalorian. And so a quick shout out if you're looking to make yummy, delicious little travel biscuits. And what's really cool is like she has a little baggie with them too. There's like a little Imperial logo. So they actually are very inspired by what we saw in the show. So it was just really cool. And thanks for tagging us on that on social media. And if you're curious, go check out that channel over there.
Hey, so is it Sugar Swings or is it Sugar S-Wings?
Why would you ask? That's,
I don't know.
This is a Padilla-ism, isn't it?
It probably is. Hey, if you're listening to the show or watching this video, let us know. We want to make sure we get that right. But I like both of them, honestly. But S-Wing sounds more Star Wars-y,
It does. And the channel, I mean, it's not only baking stuff, but very Star Wars inspired type of things too. So it's a great balance there. And oh my gosh, like thousands of posts, by the way. It's incredible. So anyway, thanks again for tagging us on that one. It was a lot of fun to kind of see that and go through, and has the recipe on there and all that good stuff as well. So kind of worth your time to go check it out, especially if you're looking for something to do with the kiddos or something over spring break or whatever your spring break looks like, I guess. And another news, kind of pull one from the backlog real fast. We had a few new covers for the Essential Legend series came out a couple weeks ago, and just wanted to share these with folks because I think, again, these are just always so cool. Like the new artwork on these. Now, these are a little bit different, a little more bold, where they're kind of going all in on this really bold look. But Outbound Flight and Survivor's Quest, both these by, of course, Timothy Zahn. But again, you get some really great, vibrant covers here. And then, of course, the one that everybody's excited about, book 2 of the Republic Commando series, 000 by Karen Travis, has one here with a couple of clones on the cover as well. So again, nothing major on that front, but for those that collect the Essentials Legends, we have a lot of people that do. And so these are really cool to bring about. And I think there's a 4th one that is part of this wave. These don't come out, I think, until August. But I think there's one more that has not had a cover announced yet. So be on the look for those. All right, what else we got in the news item here? Oh, yeah, Star Wars Celebration. Yeah, Celebration. Yeah, so your kind of weekly update here. So no new panels or anything like that. The full panel listing is out there. When we did our summary last week, it was really just the really big stuff. There are tons and tons. I went through every single one of them today, all the way down to the fan stages, the universities, all of that good stuff to look through it all. But something that if you were attending, you need to be aware of is that on the 21st at 11:59 GMT, so that's Greenwich Mean Time, that's in London, you need to have your submissions in there for your selections for the panels, because that's the cutoff. So if you were wanting to get your name into the hat for the selections for any of the big panels, you need to have it done by the 21st. So by Tuesday before midnight, London time. Make sure you got it in. So that's we're just kind of looking out for everyone. Make sure you get your selections in, because if you don't get those, I mean, they're a hot commodity anyway. They're tough to get, but you have zero chance if you don't apply.
Yep.
So we know that one's probably pretty locked into that one, but again, just a friendly reminder.
Yeah, may the odds be in your favor.
May there ever be in your favor. Yes.
Right.
If we're gonna cross the streams, at least we should get it right. Or maybe we're supposed to get it wrong. Maybe that's part of what it is.
That's a part of the charm.
Right. And then more of our local news, of course. We're trying to put together a new listener Q&A show. So many things coming about, of course. Mandalorian, Bad Batch, kind of the epilogue of that one. We only have got a couple of weeks left here of Bad Batch, which is kind of sad. But all of the upcoming announcements that we may or may not get from Celebration, and if we get the show in before or after, kind of depends on how many questions we get back. But listener Q&A, head over to cantinacast.com/question. Get those over to us as soon as possible so we can take a look at them, see when we want to put a show together. And of course, if you'd like to go and see what else Lauren is up to, the Jedi Novel Archive has been updated recently. So again, this has got Jedi Battle Scars as well as A New Dawn, both of those reviews. And again, if you're still you're waiting for the game, she has a spoiler light review or a non-spoiler type of review for Battle Scars as well. So check both of those out. Of course, we have Jeditorials over on the website, cantinacast.com. And then, of course, we do a live stream with every one of these shows on Sundays and Thursdays, sometimes more in between. And we'll see with Celebration how many we truly do, because we've got quite the slate that we're trying to work out for y'all. cantinacast.com/YouTube. You can go and subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, get notified whenever we go live. And you can join these amazing people that are currently in our chat: Cube Dude, Steph, Jonathan, Sky, Riley, Neil Sega, Qui-Gon J, Kathy, Gary, Jennifer, Keaton, anybody else that I haven't jogged it down yet, because I was trying to do it as we were going through the news. Certainly appreciate y'all showing up and doing that. And of course, a very, very special thank you to all of our Patreon members, are now part of the tribe members: Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, and Josh. And then, of course, Delusions of Grandeur, Rod, and Kathy. If you're curious about what Patreon is or how that kind of content, you can go out there and check it out at cantinacast.com/Patreon at just the After Dark tier, which is about $2 a month. You can go and get access to all of the exclusive content. And then, of course, if you'd like a chance to get on the show, check out those higher tiers, and you would do things like, what do we call it? From a certain point of view. From a certain point of view. Yes, there we go. So sharing our top 3 moments. Anytime we have an opportunity to reach out to people, those are the tiers that we go to first and ask for the help.
Yep. Yeah, great stuff there. Nicely done. I feel like you've done this before.
Yeah, man, I'm out of breath.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to get your opening thoughts here. No, I'm kidding. I'll go first. All right. Let's move into the episode.
So I do want to say opening thoughts real fast. So what I alluded to when we first came on air, it's kind of clever how they're doing this. They're doing little micro time jumps, and they're using moments like this, like so the intro with Sid, to establish like how many days have gone by, like a whole month has gone by or something like that, to give us these time frames to allow other things to develop in the background. And so it's stretching this time period a little bit more. Anyway, it's really, really super subtle. I don't know how effective it is, because it doesn't really mean anything to us in some ways until we get to another meatier piece of information, maybe Crosshair or whatever's going on Tantus. But it is kind of clever how they're doing that, and that they're at least making an effort to do something like that to show that time is going by. So you could at least go into one of those episodes if something major has happened. Maybe Crosshair is back into being regular old Crosshair, Empire Forever type of thing. At least you could point back to this episode, say, well, hey, he's been under surveillance and getting healthy and getting, reintegrated into whatever for almost a month now. So it would make sense, right? And now we're going to have all this development cycle or, redeveloping of Pabu. So again, more time can do it. So it's very subtle. It's a bit clever in how they're doing it. And I think it's things where you could point back to if we join this broadcast, already in progress later on, you at least can understand why there was a bit of a skip there.
Yeah. I do wonder how many people would be lost on something like that. But if you add it all, it adds up, right? I guess is what you're saying. They're having these small time jumps. And by the time we get to, penultimate episode or the final episode of this season, and suddenly we see sweeping changes with how characters have, developed or things are going through, you can point back to these little time jumps and just kind of say, oh, well, this all kind of added up to over the course of like 6 months to a year. So I think that makes sense. This particular episode, though, so I think, it was 3 weeks. Later on, I do want to kind of talk about, like, where does this go? Because it was almost left off as, hey, you guys are free to hang out here as long as you'd like. It's going to take a couple years before we get everything rebuilt. And they just kind of walked off into the sunset. And so I got an open question about, like, how much time are we going to see between this episode and the next, right? It could be a week. It could be several months. It could be a year. I don't know. I mean, that may feel a little drastic, but to your point, enough time there's going to be some time that likely has passed. So kind of some of my other opening thoughts here on this episode. I really enjoyed it. As crazy as it was to come off of the last episode, though, I mean, talk about night and day difference. And I mean almost literally night and day difference. Keaton Hawes said it in the chat. The contrast in color between the episode and the last episode is huge.
Yep.
I had this on my notes. The color palette that was used, I mean, it was gorgeous. Like, it was colors to the extent I don't know that we've ever seen in the Bad Batch. I think in Clone Wars, it's probably fair to say that we've seen something like that. But it's been a long time since we saw anything like this in animation that was just this vibrant. The only thing that comes to mind immediately is the opening episode for season 2, when they're on the beach and the crabs and they'd stolen that thing. I mean, it was kind of a throwback to that and how beautiful and lush everything was. They did an amazing job with the color palette, the color chosen, giving us this visual representation of what I would call Atlantis or, Babylon, one of these lost cities of, like, pure bliss, utopian cities, if you will, which I think was really good. So I think they did an incredible job of kind of displaying all of that. The theme of home was something that I really enjoyed in this episode too, because it does kind of hark back to, Omega when they lost the Marauder and just how gutted she felt, like her home had left her. It's a very big difference in where we are. Maybe that's not a difference, but it's a continuation it spills into this episode now where she's no longer even looking at the Marauder. I mean, there's just like, the reality is that there is this beautiful place here that is set on the sea, far from the Empire, outside the reaches of them, which we'll get into a little bit later, because I think we've all seen Star Wars enough to know that no place is safe, right? It's kind of foolhardy to think that you are, but I get where they're coming from. But yeah, I mean, for Omega's journey to kind of expand now into this and finally giving her a place to kind of be home or to see as home. On top of that, we'll get into all the finer details in a little bit, but I just love the fact that we were kind of presented like this perfect scenario for all of the clones, right? Everybody got what they wanted, potentially has what they want. And
Wrecker has food.
Yeah, Wrecker had food, right? The buffet or whatever it was. I love this trope a lot because it does, and I'm not saying this is where it's going to go, but if it does fall in line with what we've seen, historically through other forms of storytelling, either they either take advantage of this and suddenly it's ripped out from them, or they come to the realization that, yes, that would be amazing and we would love to do that. However, we've got a bigger purpose in the galaxy, right? And maybe that larger purpose is serving the clones and going back to war. And at some point, they'll have to table this. And yes, we'd love to come back. But I think it's probably going to be one of those two scenarios. Either way, it is just comforting to know that as much as these guys have been through, and as much as Hunter has been looking for, a home and safety and security for somebody like Omega as a daughter, he at least sees that there is an option here, right? There is a light at the end of the tunnel, which I don't think he's ever really had. We'll get into that too, because even some of his body language in the way of animation that they used to kind of show that he had finally let his guard down, that this was okay, a safe place for him. I think it was really good for Hunter because it's just something we don't, he hasn't historically gotten. He's always kind of been on the edge and worrying about Omega and the family and keeping everybody safe, right? So it was really good. I mean, it was a very good episode. Now, that said, and this is kind of what I kicked it off with, and I want your thoughts here on this. It is weird. Maybe it's not. But this is not the kind of episode I was expecting with 4 episodes left.
Right.
Especially since we've had such little amount in the way of, Mount Tantus and cloning and even Crosshair. We've only had really 2 episodes of Crosshair. And on top of that, we've been introduced with so many other things, right? Everything from Phee to Sid's ongoing stuff. We had Rex come in. We had Cody come in. So it's just been kind of, I wouldn't say all over the place, but we've had a very dynamic group of stories that have kind of all compiled. And to think that we would be 4 episodes left and going into an episode like this, it almost speaks as though something either major is going to be happening here or tragic, or maybe I'm just reading the tea leaves wrong, but I don't know. My spidey sense, or I've got a bad feeling about this, I guess is probably more appropriate here. But what do you think?
Yeah, with all of that, I mean, I kind of agree with you. It's one of the two things that you laid out. Either the Empire's going to show up and they rip it out from under them, or they've got some other call to action. And I have a feeling it's going to be the latter. I think it's going to be, and this is great. Like this is ideal. This is where we would love to be, but we can't turn our backs on the rest of the galaxy of the things that we know are going on because we know we can make a difference and we know we can do
Right.
it. So
Right.
that's kind of where my money's at on that one. I'm putting it in that basket, probably because again, that just feels good. It's been a little tried and tested and true, and it works about just coming through and decimating something to take it away from you that makes you get back into the fight. But I don't know that we. And again, there's that whole Sid component too. So if Sid figures out where they go, even though she doesn't know where they're at and doesn't have any idea about Pabu, she could sell them out. She could rat them out. She could make good on their threats. But I like the idea that they make the choice. It's a choice that they finally get to make. Another observation I had about this episode, though, was that this is the first time I think I remember the entire team, or at least all the team that are present, all smiling in the same episode. All at least letting a smile creep on the edge of their lips, which is it was just really cool. I mean, Tech smiled, Wrecker's always smiling, of course, but even Hunter
Right.
smiled, of course, then Omega's laughing and whatnot as well. So even with all of the things that happen in here, you still have these moments where it does feel like this is real. It's full of hope here, right? There really
Mhm.
can be a future. For the first time, it feels like there could be a place for them that not only works, but also is welcoming to them. And they would still serve a purpose. They would still have a reason to be there and to be able to help out. And I think that's just a really good feeling. I like that it's not just, oh, wow, it's relaxation, it's paradise. It's like, no, there's a job to do still there, something that they would feel like they could contribute to as well. And so it kind of fits that part about keeping them busy as well and giving back to a community that's given them something, even if it's only, kind of a small piece so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with Steph. Steph says, I really hope the Empire just leaves that place alone. They've already made the point that the Empire ruins everything. Just let them have this one thing. Darn it.
Well,
And I'm
and
with
there's
you.
no reason for the Empire to go out there. Like the mayor said, they have nothing to offer. They would have to know the Bad Batch went there. How would they find that out? It's kind of messy to
Yeah,
get there with just 3 episodes left,
sure.
and again, to your other point, you're right. This was a bit of a whiplash, from where we were at last week, where we thought we were going, where we know this is going to be a sprint to the finish now, in particular, now that we've had this episode. But to have this break in that action was very surprising, and it was good. There was a little bit of development there. I like that the team truly does feel like they have an alternate path to everything.
Yeah.
But I really like that they would then have the choice to whether they take it or not, even if they take it for a little while. How long we'll talk about a little bit tonight, but I like that. I like a bit of that dynamic, and again, that change of pace is important because it cleanses the palate a little bit of that intensity. And while I think you and I are probably on the same page, like, no, we would be fine with a really intense episode most weeks, especially 4 weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row. It's okay to have these palate cleansers as well that help you take a deep breath right before things get really, really tough.
Yeah. But also, I think it resets the stakes, or at least it reminds us of what the stakes are, too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That the reality is that they do have this and it is out there for them and it's in their reach. They're absolutely, in power right now to take advantage of it. And yet something probably is going to pull them away either because of their own consciousness or, getting pulled into the war again for whatever reason. That raises the stakes. And so we become more vested in just how things are going to play out because we want this for them, right? We've seen it. We couldn't be happier that all of everything they could possibly want is out there. And now, it's the rope-a-dope. They're setting us up so that we can see just how much there is to lose. And so when we go into these final 3 episodes, apparently if, there's going to be a potential loss here. And I'm not saying people are going to die or anything. I'm just saying the risk, again, the stakes are higher. The risk is greater knowing what we know and having seen what we've seen, because you're right. There were some great moments in here. We'll talk about a little bit later too, about just finally getting to see these characters be humans, right? I mean, they are, although they've been clones and they've been soldiers for so long. And somebody like Omega, even at the very beginning, they're talking about how she's such a great soldier now. That's great. But what the heck happened to her childhood,
Right.
Yeah, they kind of skipped over that, right? And to no fault of her own. So
I like that we got depth for Phee. She's not just a pirate. She's not just someone that feels a little bit sketchy on the boundaries there. It like no, when she steals something or when she liberates a fine artifact, there's something deeper to it. There's more of a reason as to why she's behaving the way that she is. And while, yeah, she's very opportunistic and wants a big score, there is this other side of her. It's not the heart of gold type of thing. Is that she's just fundamentally she's not a bad person, and she's just kind of making her way throughout the galaxy. But I wouldn't call her a scoundrel like we would equate some other smugglers that we've seen. She seems to be a little bit different than that, and she's picked up a bit of a reputation for some reason. So maybe my assessment is softer than what is reality as well. But it was good to be able to get that more human side of her too, as to why she's out there doing some of these things that, wow, she was going to pay a whole lot of credits for this, jade looking tree when it really had zero value to her. It was purely a sentimental type of item.
Yeah, for one of her folks.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into kind of the breakdown, just quickly on this one, directed by Stuart Lee, not a name I'm familiar with, at least not this season, written by Amanda Rose Munoz, and then the story continues to be Matt McNovitz is kind of beyond the story. I did want to point out, welcome back, Steve Bloom, who was a few characters, but Lance Crowder at the very beginning. If you don't recognize that voice, it's Zeb Orrelios from Zeb from Star Wars Rebels, and he's done a billion voices already. I think he was actually in last season as well. He did some like off, side characters or whatever, but he's got such a distinct voice.
Yeah, he's like Steve Stanton. He's just everywhere.
Yeah. And then Amari Williams is Shep, and the only reason I included him is because one of the shows that I really enjoy, that's even till, and I'm not kidding you, but if you ever get a chance, go watch Rescue Bots. It's like the Play School Transformers animation, and the series is already over, but the writers are so good, and the acting is so good, the voice acting is so good. But both Steve Bloom and Amari Williams were, two of the main characters, Boulder and Heatwave, in that series. So cool that they got to be, together in this episode. And that whole group, honestly, that whole group of voice actors from that series, they're like this. They're so tight. They're always hanging out. It's just a great family kind of series. Can't talk about it enough. But anyways, it was really cool to hear that. And he's got a very distinct voice as well. So he played Shep. So very cool to hear those guys out on this.
That was a deep cut there for Rescue Bots. Nicely done.
I really do enjoy that show. The storylines are really good. But okay, so enough of that. Let's get into, I guess, the opening part of this, and we go back to Shanghai, 1935, which is I have this in here as the ode to Temple of Doom, because this honestly, I mean, it's really just a tribute that's being paid back. If you've seen Temple of Doom, there is the infamous scene in there that opens up at the very beginning where they're at the Club Obi-Wan. That, back then, this is what, circa 82, I think, or 83 that they did Temple of Doom.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were paying tribute to Star Wars, and this is not the first time. There was another tribute in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But now this has come full circle, because if you, the Orabesh in the background is Club Lao Che, sorry, and Lao Che is the name of the gangster that was at the beginning of the Temple of Doom. So very cool that they kind of paid that tribute back as well. And there were other references in there.
Yeah, the framing of Pabu actually reminded me of the Paramount Mountain too.
Yeah,
as well, from the beginning of
you say that, I didn't really pick up on that, but there are very distinct similarities with how they did that. But yeah, so this is everything in Temple of Doom. It was kind of the same thing, right? There was somebody that was buying something. Indy was buying something. We got Phee buying something here. They had the poisons. Both of them had poisons. There was kind of a double cross that had happened in both of these kind of scenes as well. But this whole deal kind of goes bad with this guy named Crowder, who was played by Steve Bloom. And I guess one of the things that I really liked was this kind of a carryover. We had talked about in that episode with Phee that Omega was really enthralled. Like, she kept looking up to her, and we wondered whether or not we'd see more of this. And I think we were definitely seeing it there. If you look at Omega during these scenes, I mean, she's just kind of looking up at her, taking notes, drinking from the fountain of wealth and knowledge and, wisdom that Phee has. And so, we talked about whether or not this would steer her in some direction, one way or the other. And I don't know, there was really a whole lot here to kind of say, yeah, definitely. But it was just fun to watch Omega not only just see what a professional is doing, but know that it's something that is of interest to her and actually having a part in it too. I thought that was really cool that Phee gave her the opportunity to kind of be a part of this whole deal.
Yeah, is it the most responsible thing on the planet to do? No, right. Absolutely not. That they keep putting this kid in these positions. Even she knows this deal's going to go south, right? She knows that she's going to get betrayed, double crossed, all that good stuff. But I think it did when Crowder said, I thought you worked alone. She's like, well, things change. I mean, you can see that Phee has grown attached to Omega, probably specifically, but also the team in general and maybe Tech as well in some way. But she's kind of attached to the team. There's something about this team that she just really likes. She's kind of building a bit of a trustworthy relationship there where Sid always felt like it was just always on the verge of falling apart. It was always contentious. It was always arguing. It was just not, it was no partnership in it. But yet they've seemed to have found this balance. And I think a lot of it is probably going through Omega, just with how much she likes her spirit, and again, Omega does look up to Phee, but I think it's kind of fun there. But again, this is like terrible parenting over and over and over by this whole entire group of people. But what do you?
Well, it's Hunter.
True. I mean, it's the galaxy's a dangerous place, and she's got to learn to make her way through it and all of that good stuff, I suppose. But I mean, still. But it makes for fun though. But again, Omega's super capable too, right? Yeah, she's able to take care of herself. She's able to be literally on the front line and do things to protect not only herself but protect her team, and to be resourceful and not have to be cared for. She can care for herself even at this really young age.
Yeah. And we get the Cohoons or Calhoons, the little caterpillar centipede bugs from Attack of the Clones. Those come out. How they knew to go after her, I don't know. That's the Star Wars stuff. It's fine. But they did go after her, and that's when everything kind of goes. And this is a really cool, nice little fun battle. It was really cool. I mean, the way Phee kind of pushes off from that desk was really neat. And then Omega, and I have in here, Omega kills. Like I played this a few times in slow motion, just kind of pause it. When Phee kicks herself back, right, when things go really south and we get the gunfight, if you will, or the bar fight, Omega pulls out the bow and without any hesitation, and she whips one of those arrows right in that guy's it almost looks like the stomach or the chest. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy's dead. And so, but she doesn't really bat an eye, and it's never covered and it's never talked about. When that happened, I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to have this moment where she's like, oh, I finally killed somebody, and this is not what I was expecting. And, her having to deal with that. But I mean, I don't know, stone cold killer, I guess. I don't know. It didn't seem like it impacted her at all. And then later on, she calls it the mission was fun. She goes, well, that was fun, right? And I'm thinking, you killed somebody, young lady. How can that be fun? But I guess it was maybe, because it's a survival thing, then it's okay. I'm not making a whole big deal of that, but I think it's significant to know that, one, she's capable of doing all this, like you said. Two, she's in these very dangerous predicaments and she can handle herself. But three, she's drawn blood, or at least she's not afraid to, I guess.
Yeah, we've seen the side of Omega where she is scared and she is concerned. We saw that later in this episode as well. But again, I think when the chips are down and she has to take action, she's willing to do that. And I think that, again, it goes to her training of just being steel as nerves. When you need to make a decision and go, you make the decision and you go. And she's killed other things in the past, she's shot at and that kind of thing. I can't remember if she's killed a person before. So maybe you're right. That might be the first time there. But again, it was just in the moment. She was defending herself. So there's a lot of ways you can explain that away of, well, I mean, they betrayed us and they all had their guns drawn and we had to get out and we fight our way out. We survive. Yeah. So it kind of makes sense in that regard, I suppose. And I like that she was resourceful. She took the bell out, or the light fixture, which I guess sounded more like a big bell that fell on top of the guy and probably just trapped him in there. He didn't get squashed or anything like that. But, so
we had something similar in Temple of Doom. There was the big gong thing that, the big wheel, the metal wheel that was spinning, and they shoot it and it makes the big gonging noise. It was kind of similar to that. It wasn't really exactly the same thing, but again, it was some massive metal object that was in both scenes. So probably a tribute as well there. And so, they call Tech, and of course he's playing whatever game he is against himself because he says that's the only way it's a challenge, which I thought was good. They pick him up and they evacuate, right? They get out of there. And this is where we kind of get Omega, I guess Hunter and Phee kind of talking about, Omega's role in all this, right? And they're questioning, what other skills does she need? Clearly she proved herself right here in the moment. And Fee's looking at this from a very, I wouldn't say motherly, but just parental kind of adult side of things of you got a kid here. And she needs to be around other people and other friends. And this is great that you guys have created this amazing soldier, but do you really want this for her? Is that really the life of a child? They didn't have a choice because they were brought into it and they were bred for this. But I mean, they're only doing what they know, which I totally get. And I know Hunter's kind of been on the fence about all this stuff. And I know he's been kind of a little timid at times. But I think in his mind, he always felt like the best way to bring her up is to train her to be a soldier. That way she can take care of herself, and I don't have to worry about that aspect. And while that's very noble, there's a whole lot left to child development that she's not getting, being in this role, which I think is what Fee's really trying to push here.
Yeah, and I think there's some level too, and it's not really spoken or anything, but we could read a little further into it. I think Phee feels like this is necessary for the rest of them too, not just Omega, but it's a way for her to leverage Omega's youth and like you were saying, the developmental side of things, and wanting to have friends, have a different life. You want to provide her a different life, but also help the team realize that there's more to it as well, and they can go along with her on that journey to something better and bigger than what they've had to live for the last near 10 years or so, however long it's been.
Yeah. Sophie talks about how, they should not have crossed Sid. She knows better. It sounds like they have a different relationship than I think we initially thought, right? I was thinking they were like BFFs or whatever, and it feels like it's more business than anything else.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like it's been more. She's probably witnessed a lot of things though too, so maybe she hasn't been on that side of things for Sid, but she's definitely witnessed somebody else who thought they were, maybe closer with Sid, and then they did something that she didn't like, and she totally turned her back on him. But again, to Fee's credit though, and again, how much she likes the team, to go and then, I mean, actually, it was kind of funny because she said, "Well, what's your backup plan?" Andrew's like, "Well, you're looking at it." Yeah, I just couldn't help but laugh because I was like, "Man, that's about as far ahead as they're able to think, not capacity wise, just." That's the only their options only go so far to where they can make such a,
exactly.
They can't make a really long-term plan at all. It's like, where am I going to go tomorrow at best type of thing, maybe in the next few days at most, but nothing really a week or a month or a year out, nothing like that. They don't have a stash of money. They don't have a hideout or anything like that. Everything was revolved around Sid. And so I like that she was able to kind of take them under her wing and open herself up too, and make herself more vulnerable, that this is a team worth doing that to. Even Sid doesn't know this location. It's her little hideaway, her home away from home, she calls it. And so to be able to open that up to the team and make this an opportunity, to show them a different life and something that she seems to enjoy from time to time, at least a place to go back and call home. It was really nice to be able to see her, open up in that way.
I want to just quickly touch on Sid's voicemail or video mail or whatever you want to call it, holo mail.
That's pretty threatening, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like it was threatening. It was more threatening than I think we've gotten from her. I mean, I get it. I mean, they've been trying to play up the fact that she can't be trusted, and she's been, pretty aggressive at times and kind of grumpy, right? This came across a little bit different. And she does mention that she's been losing money.
Came across as blackmail.
Right? Like she's talking about how she's been losing money with their absence, because there are probably certain missions that she can't run without them.
She wasn't making any money with them at times either.
So that's very true too. I don't know what she wants. But yeah, I mean, she kind of threatens with them about, their mutual agreement. And she threatens that, hey, I know about you guys and who you are. Don't forget that. And she kind of leaves that little hanging comment, right? That real passive aggressive one about you boy, not just you boys or whatever it was. And I took that as Omega, right? Like she was threatening Omega. But I mean, I guess it could be Phee as well. I don't know that it was exactly clear, but how did you take that last comment there where she said, not just, I'm not talking about you, just you boys either? And I'm paraphrasing what she says.
Yeah, I don't remember that part. I think she just said, you boys. I don't remember her applying that threat to Omega. I don't know that she knows her with Phee either, to be honest with you. Maybe that she might suspect that they've connected with Phee, but I don't know that there's no evidence, I think, to that at least. But no,
yeah,
I thought
she says, I'm not just talking about you boys, is what she says.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I had to go and rewatch that because I didn't take it that way. I thought she was purely threatening the guys rather than, she was more of like, I know every detail about you. I know who you are. I know all the things. I mean, she came across very clear regardless, right? Like she's threatening them. If you don't come back, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, if you don't do the right thing by me, I'm a liability for you. I will go out. I will rat you out, and I'll rat you out to the right people. Now, Sid isn't dumb, and by her ratting them out, puts her at risk too.
Puts her at risk.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a viable path for her. And again, we've seen and she's not dumb either. Right? She knows that if she goes to the Empire, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to reward her or even just leave her alone. They might take her out too, right? And we've seen examples of that where, well, yeah, we saw this in Tales of the Jedi, right, with the Inquisitor. Yeah, you did your part, you ratted out Ahsoka, but let me give you your reward, which was basically going to kill him. So, I mean, you can't really trust the Empire to do or to not do anything either, that they're always going to take action around you, even if you do the quote unquote right thing.
So I pulled it up, and I'm reading the actual verbatim. I think it's more at Phee, but she says, "You do well to not assume I am just threatening you boys." So I feel like, I don't know that she would threaten Omega like that. That feels like it's more aimed towards Phee. But to your point, like, I guess she doesn't really know that they're with Phee, so I don't know.
Yeah,
and this is just a voicemail, so it's not like interactive or
yeah,
whatever.
and I think it was more like it's basically telling them it's not just a threat to you boys, not to you boys, or not to you boys, but to her too. I think it was more of like, just don't think I'm just threatening you. I will follow through on my threat. That's how I kind of heard it, at least.
Oh yeah, and there's no comma here, so who knows?
Yeah,
but the comma would make all the difference. All right,
grammar's important for a reason.
Yeah, it is. Grammar is punctuation is very important. Okay, so we were talking about, Fee's proposal at this point, right? Talking about how she knows Sid, not a good idea to cross her, but I got kind of a alternative for you, right? This place that you can go and get away from all this, cut ties with her if you need to. Or actually, I got a question. Do you feel like they have cut ties? They felt like, Hunter says, basically we were in this relationship that was supposed to be mutual beneficial, only it was never mutual beneficial. And it does feel like, with 20 days, 3 weeks pass, a month or so that have passed now, they've had zero contact. It kind of feels like they have cut her off, and like they've just cold turkey just walked away from all this, right? They were square, according to their last mission. She probably feels like they're still obligated to help out because that they've never really ceased and desist that contract or whatever it is. But for them, I think they've walked away and just said, look, we're going to go figure all this stuff out on our own. But have they cut ties with her?
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. I'm not even sure they told her that they quit. I think they may have just completely cut off and said, like you said, they were just, no, we were done on that space. They didn't really finish that mission, and they left her high and dry on that one potentially, which would have set her off in that way. But again, she was one of those people that wasn't going to let them walk away unless it was on her terms anyway. And they would have decided it up front. And even then she may have tried to change the terms afterwards. So I don't know that there was any clean exit strategy for them. But I was actually really proud of Hunter's choice of words as well. It was supposed to be mutually beneficial, but it wasn't actually beneficial mutually. It was great just spinning it around. So I was really proud of his play on words there.
Yep.
Well done, Hunter. Thumbs up.
Yeah. He does have his moments. And then we get to what I'm calling Phee Tech Part 1. I don't know what's the best way best term to use the ship between Phee and Tech, but there were at least 3 very clear, distinct, like, okay, this is going somewhere. And I shared some art with you guys. I'm not going to put it up I was going to put it up on the show and I forgot to save it. So you're welcome. But there was some fan art that somebody had already drawn, and it wasn't inappropriate. It was just them like caressing and stuff. It was really cute. I guess they've been kind of signaling this. There have been hints that have been dropped all season about, the brown eyes comment. And now I want to go back and just figure out, like, okay, were there other things there that I just was not picking up on? But, she kind of leans over really close, number one, gets into his personal space, puts her arm on his left shoulder, makes the brown eyes comment. And it's the first one. And we'll get more into this a little bit later, but I don't know. I have this as a question a little bit later too, like in the very final is whether or not Tech is good for Phee. But are you okay with,
is Phee good for Tech?
Yeah, or Phee good for Tech is really what I put in there. Yeah. But are you on board with the idea that, okay, that there is something more here?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you can be a hard sell sometimes.
Oh, yeah. He's softening on it. And again, even her tone softened quite a bit with, I'm actually doing you a favor, by the way.
You gotta pull that up. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
So yeah.
Look at that. Isn't that cute?
Yeah, she actually softened her tone when she's talking to him too, in a more, I wouldn't say sultry kind of way, but just a more inviting and open and genuine, type of way. Plug in these coordinates, brown eyes. It wasn't condescending. It wasn't, trying to elicit a response or anything like that. It was just, genuine. And I think that's the one thing that throughout this episode, you really start to see, like you see her, toasting him and pouring him a drink and just wanting to enjoy time, together and treating each other. And he's definitely starting to feel things that he's not felt before. Don't really understand him, turning around to look back at her and thinking of her in a different way, especially after, giving the artifact to the little girl. And so, it's developing, right? And again, her hard exterior, there's a lot more to the character, a lot more depth than what they all realized. And I think they're all starting to not only be able to see it as she's been more vulnerable, but appreciate it too. And I think Tech, again, is on this emotional journey of his of actually feeling, or at least being comfortable with expressing and feeling and allowing himself to interpolate all of the the calculations that are going through his mind about what a relationship might actually look like.
Yeah, right. I'm sure it's a science for him. This is good. It's really good. Of all the characters, you couldn't be happier for somebody like Tech to. There's a good dynamic there, and it's been we've seen this before. Yeah, there's probably a trope name for it. There's a trope for everything, but
Right.
Somewhere that you've got this, very calculated, introverted type character, and you've got somebody like Fee's personality coming in, and just that dynamic, and really kind of bringing him out of his shell. All that would be really great. I don't know realistically how much we're going to get of that, given the timeline. And this could be one of those sad stories too, where like he makes a decision of like that's she's my Pabu. Not to get too sappy, right? But he may leave her. He may have to choose. Like as much as I want to be with her, and he's starting to feel all this stuff. He's a soldier, and he's going to get sucked back into war. And how tragic would that be if he never had a chance to go back to her, right? Given that there's a path forward here with her.
And it might not be a path that she wants to follow either. I mean, it's not her fight. She doesn't really have any stakes in any of that, I think. At least
Yeah.
none that we really are overt to us or that are really known. So again, would she, if he says, "Hey, I got to go do this thing, I'd come with us. Like you're amazing, you're resourceful, I like you, so on and so forth." But would she do it? Because it's not her fight. She doesn't have that same, even she would be doing it kind of for them, but not necessarily for her heart. So it'll be interesting to see when that decision comes, which presumably might be next episode, called Tipping Point. Could mean a lot of things for a lot of different characters. And I have a feeling for her it will also be that moment too of, well, which way is she gonna go? Is she gonna take this leap of faith as well, of actually opening her heart to someone, or is she going to say, "No, not my fight. I hope you come back though at some point"?
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of it's not my fight, but then I think she feels she has a higher calling in bringing culture back to the people there on Pabu, and so I get why she wouldn't go outside of it's just not her fight. Let's get into that now, because we get to Pabu, which is the home away from home. It's a hidden sanctuary, free from the Empire. I don't believe that for a second, even though there are no resources there for the Empire to pillage and plunder. The Empire is such that they want control. It's about ultimate power, right? Not to quote Palpatine. But if it means making everybody bend a knee just to bend a knee, that's what they would do. Now, they're probably low on the list of systems to come by. And so from that perspective, I guess, yeah, they are relatively safe and free from the empire, the reign or the long arm of the Empire. But that only goes so far. It's only a matter of time. There's this Archeum that we're introduced to, essentially this kind of like a museum where, Phee is grabbing all these heirlooms and relics and things that are important to these people's culture and kind of storing them here. This plays very well with a number of things that we've seen either already in the Bad Batch and the Clone Wars and Andor and the Mandalorian, where the Empire comes in and just wipes out a culture, right? They're just making everybody uniform and confined or, fall in line with what they want. The only culture they really want is the Imperial culture. And that's what they're propagating and pushing and forcing upon people in a lot of different ways. And so I get for her, this is kind of important. And for the people there, it totally makes sense. That preservation of culture that the Empire is always trying to extinguish here.
Yeah, and again, we don't know what planet they're on or what system they're truly in. Pabu is just the island. So I think
Right.
from a Pabu specific perspective, yeah, the island doesn't have anything of value to the Empire. It doesn't really have a reason for them to be there or anything else. But to your point, if the planet has any kind of value for the Empire to show up and want to control it and control resources or whatever it might be, then that extends to the island. Because you're right, it will be complete. It will cover everyone. It will apply to everyone. But I do think that the Empire has a reason to, like, needs to have a reason to show up somewhere, because they are stretched a little bit thin in some ways. We know what their objectives are and what it is they need to drive forward. They need resources. They don't necessarily care about just subjugating every single planet they come across. I mean, at least they don't just go and pick all of them. They want control over all of them, but first things first, let's secure the resources we need if we have labor or something like that. But again, so we'll have to see what the value of this planet looks like to see what reason they would have to show up in the first place. But for now, it does seem like a sanctuary city at the very least.
Do you think the Bad Batch being there though? I mean, they're almost inviting the Empire.
Like, yeah, but they'd have to know. Someone would have to know they're there.
Well, okay, but still, let's just move past that, right?
Okay.
If you get past that point and the Empire knows the Bad Batch is there,
oh yeah.
Or let's fast forward even further, and this is kind of jumping ahead to some of the final thoughts questions. But they kind of tease this idea of like, hey, there are other refugees here. It's a safe place. Potentially, could you have like clones coming here? Is this maybe what Hunter's thinking? Or he reaches out to Rex and goes, hey, there's this great place that we can start having people just live a life and free of the Empire and stuff. I mean, at that point, you're almost inviting the Empire if they were to find out. Now, granted, I get that. But if I was the Empire and I knew that I was trying to extinguish the clones, for whatever reason, but particularly the Bad Batch who have now, been on the run, they were supposed to have been killed. They find out that they're still alive. We don't even know what the tides are going to be coming into Tantus and just what the impacts are going to be there. But that would be a reason why I think the Empire would then come. So, I don't think Shep or Phee are really looking at it. I don't think they really understand just how much they could be inviting more than just a few folks to hang out with them.
Yeah, and again, we don't know if anybody traced them or got wind of their blasting out of this last place they were in with this deal that went bad with Crowder. Maybe someone saw that, they reported them. Those things come out later on, and that would expose their location. At least it would point the Empire in the right direction, especially if they noticed a little girl that seemed to be with a bunch of clones, right? And we know that is now a target. So you're absolutely right. There are ways for the Empire to show up on this planet. And again, if there are refugees, presumably there's not high value targets in there, but you don't know. And it's very possible that, that there might be an interesting place. Now, I do like the idea though of saying, what, if we are able to extract clones and we need a place for them to be even temporarily, now we have a need for people to help build, and you have soldiers who are willing to work. And we kind of have to help retrain them for reintegration into, just daily life of something. It's a great place to potentially do that, right? It seems to be a culture that's very open and welcoming to that, as long as they're kind of doing their part. And it would be a really great place. I think it would be a great story for that. And again, it's so locked away and so small and unique. I don't know how many they could take, but it would be a great place to at least begin that type of that staging of people and opening that up. Now, Phee might have a bit of an issue with that. On the surface, that sounds great, but also Fee's like, what? Well, hold on. I took you guys here because you guys are like becoming my family of sorts. I didn't intend to bring the entire Grand Army of the Republic.
Right. Yeah. Tens of thousands of clones out there.
Right. And you guys are telling me that you've got these believer clones or something going on now, or, Rex is saying something like this. So I can't trust that even the clones you're bringing here are all, they're all people just abandoning the army. What if we're bringing the bad ones here too? Yeah. So it could be pretty messy, and it could create some friction there as well with Phee and the team.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially when you start talking about chips. Okay. So, do you bring in the chip folks or non-chip folks, or it gets slippery really, really quickly.
Really feels like the chip thing has really gone away though.
Well, I was just thinking that too. I was like, hey, wait a minute. We haven't talked about chips in a while. Like,
well, we've brought it up.
What's going on with that?
Yeah. But again, it hasn't really been brought up in the context of the show. And again, I think, it's always present though, like, because otherwise the clones, them starting to challenge it and feeling like they've been abandoned, and those emotions coming through, you hear the influence of the chip, but you don't necessarily see the effectiveness of it for whatever reason that might be. And we've explored that a few episodes back, or maybe several months back at this point. But so at some point you'd like to think maybe that discussion will come back around to understand what's going on with that, but they've completely ignored it for the most part though. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting.
We learned that Sid has never been brought here purposefully. Right. So that's kind of plot armor, because now we don't have to worry about Sid finding them, which is fine. But then she says, it makes you wonder, huh? Like when they ask, like, well, so why did you bring us here? She goes, no, it makes you wonder, huh? Like there is a motive here for her doing it. And we don't necessarily find out. I think on the surface, it is like you said, oh, they're family, or it could be just selfish reasons. She really likes tech and knows that the only way she gets tech is, getting Omega, and it's a package deal, right? She's got to bring all of them on. But then I started to think too, do you think there's probably a succession plan here for her? Like thinking, okay, kind of getting too old for this. I need somebody that I feel like I can trust, like somebody like maybe Omega, like mentoring her, bringing her up in that thing, or just knowing that they are resourceful enough and that if they're willing to live there, then, she's got more muscle and she's got other people now that are kind of still in the cause of, preserving these relics and preserving the culture of Pabu. And so, I mean, it feels like it's kind of easy money for the Bad Batch, right? Kind of below their skill set, but the importance is probably not lost. Is probably greater for her. Like she gets the importance of that, and maybe she's trying to convince them that this is kind of your future now going forward.
Well, I think she sees her pseudo niece, being around the same age as Omega, and having that comparison of, I'd love for Omega to have that kind of life, grow up in a normal life, grow up in a caring environment, grow up in a safe environment, grow up where you can actually make choices about what you want to do, and apply yourself in whatever is interesting to you, and have her that open flexibility. I think she genuinely cares about, for whatever reason, Omega in that way. And I have a feeling it's because of her, we'll call her niece. And so I think it's something like that, though, that she just sees that in her and she keeps going back, because when she talks to Hunter them, it's not always about, it doesn't seem to have an angle for Phee. At least it's not obvious, right? Well, don't you want something else for her? Like, don't you want her to be able to, like, you want to do these things for her? I mean, she just kind of calls it out because, I think she's probably seen it at least once or twice where Hunter, wants to do this, or he's at least affirmed that. And so I think it just makes sense of where she's coming from, of saying this is an opportunity for her to finally do that. And she being Phee is willing to open up and, kind of expose that part of her life in order to do that. And again, hopefully give Omega something that she's never had and potentially could never have, while still acknowledging that, hey, these guys have been doing everything that they can. They've done a great job, but they've only been able to do what they can do. And they know that. And they don't have any ego with that one. They just want her to be safe and happy. And so I can help with that too, and maybe help them in the process. And yeah, maybe that does help explore things with tech on a more personal level. But taking care of Omega is something that everybody in that team can get on board with.
Yeah. We get the Phee Tech moment part 2. So the second time that they were kind of signaling some stuff here. There's that, I love the line about lots of food, drink, in general, merrymaking. You'll probably hate it, talking to Tech. I mean, like calling him out, and just not something he would, do. Anything social seems like completely outside of his realm of comfort. But yeah, I mean, you pointed out, like, even when she's walking away, like he had that kind of like, caring husband, partner look, the way he turned towards, and she's like, I'm just going to go put some stuff away, safe. I'm fine or whatever. But, it's definitely impacting Tech, and Wrecker gives him a hard time about this a little bit later. I mean, everybody, I think we kind of skipped it over.
Competition, huh?
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, so whether or not they've had conversations or whatever, but I think it's pretty obvious, at least from the Bad Batch now for us from the audience, that, yeah, he's kind of in. Like, he seems very genuinely interested in her. So, I know, it's a good thing for them.
Yeah, and
throw up the picture again when you get a chance.
And he gives her,
No,
he gives her a little smile too, right? I mean, so he's clearly opening up to this idea, and I think he actually understood it was a joke, and he, maybe even laughed internally a little bit. I'd like to think that he got it, and he was like, yeah, that's probably true. She knows me pretty well.
Yeah.
But also it was all in good fun as well. And so he understood that, and it's sweet, right? I mean, it's sweet that he's seeing that in her, and that she, sneaks a peek back too, and just make that connection and give that confirmation that he's pretty hard in the head, but even he's starting to get it.
Well, for him, it's statistically speaking, this is his best shot. So put the love aside.
His only shot.
Right. It's his only shot. So you could be a cynic about this and just be like, well, he's already calculated the probability of him finding anyone ever in his life. And so this is this one shot. He's going to take it. So
3,720 to 1.
Right. Okay. So we'll kind of summarize this next piece here, because it's really kind of this culmination of a lot of different talking points about the city and where they're at and what they're doing. But essentially, they've got the lower and upper Pabu, the refugees have been coming ever since the Galactic War. I mean, it's beautiful. All these shots are gorgeous as they're up there. Again, this is when the Moon Use come up, those little monkey creatures. it felt like it was Raiders of the Lost Ark when they're in Cairo.
Right.
And that little monkey comes up. We even had that scene of it kind of jumping across, and then, Marianne gets really shocked because it jumps over to her other shoulder, and she kind of whips around and looks at it. And Omega did the same thing here. So very similar again. It was almost like that whole scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is really great. But, you can see it on everybody's face. Like Hunter, like everybody is going to get what they want, right? Hunter is finally kind of gets his peace of mind, possible stability. She made that, Phee makes that comment about a father finally, giving, wanting to raise a child the right way. And these are all the things that we know Hunter's been thinking about over the course of the last 2 seasons. Wrecker gets his, buffet. He talks about how he's never full, and I'm never full, right? So there's plenty of food, and that may be as simple as it gets for that dude, because he's never gonna have a really deep storyline at their character development at this point. That's about as deep as it's going to get. But Tech gets the girl, and Phee gets the man, if you want to go that way as well. And then Omega, of all things, right? She gets a playmate, somebody her age. She gets a home, best friend, safety. And then she gets to laugh again. I mean, when she laughs, and they made that comment about, we haven't heard her laugh like that in a long time. Like, I don't even know that we've ever heard her laugh like that. Maybe at the end of in season 1, when they were eating the, whatever it was, moose munch, or
right.
That, what was that called now? I'm trying to think of what it was called. Mando munch? No, that's something totally different. That's fan fiction. So no, whatever it was, it's been a while, right? Since we've seen her kind of laugh and joke and just kind of be a kid. So everybody gets what they want. So this is all kind of, again, very, it's just interesting that everything is here for them in the taking. And anytime you see this, it always goes those one of two ways. Either they're going to just acknowledge that, yes, this would be amazing. It is everything we have ever wanted, but we simply cannot do it. Or they take it and it gets pulled from them.
Yeah, Mantel mix was what you're looking for.
Mantel mix. I like Mando Munch. I don't know what that is, but maybe we'll say that for the after show. But anyway, so I guess everything that's kind of going on here. Any thoughts on, everybody getting everything they want, and just kind of the city of wonders that is Pabu?
Yeah, and it was nice that they actually just be able to sit down for a family meal and enjoy themselves and feel safe and feel relaxed and feel that they could actually just enjoy life. And things really do have a positive side to them. Like, this really could, this is reality for these people every single day. And it's something that could be afforded to the Bad Batch as well. And for Hunter and specifically to be able to offer this to his family as kind of the patriarch.
Right.
And everyone just kind of buys into it too. They all, at least in this moment, they're just kind of living in the moment, which is nice. They're always having to live in the moment, but it's always usually a threatening moment, right? It's nothing,
right, yeah.
Not one of overall joy and just
right.
relaxation, and of course something goes wrong. And you kind of got an idea that, when they said that they didn't populate the lower tiers of Pabu until somewhat recently, it was like, okay, that's a flag, but, and again, we kind of see this. And again, the whole idea of Pabu is a bit interesting because it's like people building on volcanoes, right? At some point, if it's an active volcano, at some point it's going to erupt again.
Yeah.
But you still do it anyway because it's paradise,
mm-hmm.
and it's your home and you're attached to it. But it was great just to see them enjoy that, and just to see them act like a normal family and be able to laugh freely, openly, and not having that. It was nice. It was just nice. It was very comforting to be able to watch that this was something possible for the team.
Well, and I have this segment, I called it Have Fun, because what I have in my notes is I didn't, like, when he said that the first time, I was like, okay, I didn't really think anything of it. It was upon like second or third viewing, the idea that Hunter would ever echo the words "have fun,"
right,
seems so far and distant. You know what I mean? And you can and this is where I felt like they did a really good job with the animation. You could see his body language. Like, he genuinely had finally let his guard down for the very first time. It was like, sure, go have fun, go be a kid. I'm not going to worry about you for the first time, for however, as long as you've been here with me now. That had to be very freeing for him. And I think that's what I could see on his body language and the way he said it. He's almost smiling.
Yeah, he was.
Which I don't know that we've ever seen Hunter smile, right? But just, that whole idea, that whole concept of having fun is just something that he's probably never thought he would ever say or ever be able to provide to Omega. And yet here he was, living in the moment, doing exactly that. When they get into the boat, the music here I thought was really good. it stood out, and it's Kiner again, of course, and there was other moments too I thought was really good. During the rescue as well is another one that stood out when the music starts kind of that marching,
Right.
you know, the tempo starts picking up. But when she heads out, I get choked up. I got choked up when I spent most of my life surrounded by the ocean, but it didn't feel like this place. There was something about that. Even a couple of viewings, it wasn't just the first time, but there's just something about it because they do such a good job with the music. And then they did a good job with the animation. And when she's just kind of having that moment where she's taking a breath and breathing in and closing her eyes, right? And just kind of feeling all that. I mean, you can't help but feel for her and just the sense of peace and calmness that she must be feeling, that serenity that she's never had. Like you said, they've always been on this, literally living for their lives, right? Their lives are always a danger. And yet here they are. She was finally kind of having this very Zen moment of realizing that she was connecting with the ocean in a way that she never connected with before, even though she was brought up living in the ocean or surrounded by the ocean. And so it reminded me of Ray talking about, I never knew there was this much green in the entire galaxy. We've talked about that parallel before as well. But then she mentions really quickly, and I'll kind of get your thoughts on all this, but she kind of mentions that she's never thought about loneliness. I always want to push back a little bit on that one because I think there were times that we saw her, huddled up in her room, that little area up there, feeling lonely, feeling out of place, maybe more in season 1 than season 2. And so in her defense, maybe she's talking about recently, she's not really been focused on loneliness because for her, it's always been about her brothers and her, the crew, the squad. But, loneliness can take on a lot of different forms. And that certainly satisfies certain aspects of her relationships, her relationship needs and her development. But there, again, like we talked about earlier, there's a whole lot of other stuff that's not happening. And I think from her, where she's probably coming from is the loneliness of not having a peer, or the loneliness of not doing something simple as going out into the water and not feeling like you're on a mission or having to kill anything. You're just out there to kind of enjoy the environment and take in, what the force has provided.
The force has provided?
I was going to say God, but there's
okay,
no
I just want to make sure I heard that right. Yeah, I guess a couple things. I guess, yeah, when she was taking in the environment, surrounded by water, never felt anything like this. I mean, you think about Camino, it was so sterile all the time. It wasn't teeming. Yeah. It was teeming with life in the ocean, of course, with people and everything else, but it was just such a controlled, rigid environment with no flexibility, very high standards, no, for lack of a better word, just no life to it. And here it was just like you just breathe in freedom, which is just so liberating, like you were saying. And about the loneliness thing, I thought about that too. And I think it was very much a season 1 thing, that isolation and that not feeling like you belonged, not feeling like you were welcome as part of the team. All that stuff has gone away with season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so for her, she's always integrated. She's being trusted. Now she's had her conflicts with them, of course. And I'll stay with the ship, and gives a little bit of attitude, the teenage angst coming through. But generally, and we knew this coming into the season, that all of those things of do you fit, what is your role, all of those types of things, we knew those would more or less be resolved. And I think they've made true with that comment as well. And I think when she thinks about that, she's not lonely because you're right. She is around them. They do things. She feels like she belongs. It's her squad. It's her family. But she had never really considered that she didn't have a peer. She didn't have someone to play with, someone to relate with on her own age level and maybe other interests, or even another female for the most part, right? Or just someone who can give a different perspective. And she didn't know what she was missing. She didn't know she was missing it. But the more she's exposed to it and these other things, it's like, wow, I kind of like that. And again, when she sees another kid, we see her light up every time.
Yeah.
Right. So we know that that's a gap, but she just doesn't have the time, or it doesn't surface to the top of her mind very often. And so I think that's just something that until someone points it out, she doesn't really even recognize it, even though she might feel it, but only in those given moments. And they're always very short lived. So it's not something she dwells on a whole lot.
So we have this tsunami that happens, I guess, at this point. And interesting that Hunter, along with all the animals, were able to feel it.
Right.
I guess this is part of his skills. I don't know. We don't really get a whole lot from Hunter. He's good at tracking and leading, I guess, but we always knew there was something about him. And this was in it was in the Clone Wars, I think, in those episodes where he could sense things like this. And so we always assumed that he had heightened senses, smell, all that. But this is almost like a sixth sense that animals have, that there's something, they're so in tune with, the earth or where they're at, the environmentally wise, that they can predict something like this is happening, right? They feel the small tremors that we can't feel. Hunter's probably, in tune with all of that as well. Whatever, it's fine. They gave him something to finally do. So he tells them, hey, something's coming. And this tsunami essentially is what starts, because they talked about tremors. And so it's not really a tidal wave. It'd be more of a tsunami. These, the plates shifting around, causing tidal wave. Well, it's not a tidal wave, but a tsunami.
Yeah, and it's not usually from where you're at, like in the epicenter. It's usually somewhere else that's pushing those waves out there. Anyway, but
yeah,
science notwithstanding, he feels like something is about to happen, something's about to shift. Right. And yeah, then they I did like that they said that they understood, and they did bring a bit of the science in, that everything does recede out. Like you're in low tide all of a sudden, and then it all just comes in this gigantic wave. So yeah, so I like that that's really how it works. So
do you think there's anything in the fact that it's been 30 years, right? They've never had this happen. And then just the very first day that these guys are on this island.
The Force works in mysterious ways.
Well, that's the only thing I can chalk it up to. Like, I don't think there's anything other than this is the will of the Force, right or wrong. The Force had to have intervened here to provide them with something they're going to need later down the road, but it just seems too coincidental.
Or to make sure that the people of Pabu had what they needed in that moment, because something was going to happen.
Yeah.
So you could look at it that way as well.
Yeah.
The Force is like, no, this episode is going to be a little too boring if we don't put a little excitement in here. So
yeah,
we're just going to spice it up a little bit.
Yeah. And they talk about the early or the warning systems not going off, and then right on cue, they finally go off. So they're, a little old and probably need to be updated. Is all there. Now, the whole tsunami scene I thought was great, though, especially with Omega and Liana, which we haven't really talked about as being Shep's daughter, and Shep being the mayor of Pabu. But then being out on there, and then the water receding the way it did, all that stuff was really great, because we all know, to your point, like, it's going to come back around. And so we're just kind of waiting for it. And when they actually showed that tsunami coming, it's like, wow, this is a pretty freaking large wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. They crash into the rocks. Hunter tells them, look, I'm going to go pick you guys up in the water. They start running. All of this was really good stuff. And then we got to see Phee and Tech kind of work together, right? As the power couple that they are.
Man, Tech got to have a heroic moment and everything. Firing the rappelling line up there, and then grab onto the hip. Hang on.
Exactly.
Man.
It was like an Arrow Flynn moment, or Batman.
Yes.
I was thinking Batman with the back grappler gun thing, whatever.
With Vicky Vale.
With Vicky Vale, yeah. So, it was a good moment for him. Like, he got to be very cavalier and kind of be the hero in that moment. So cool for him. But they're working together to get these ladders out. These poor people are trying to get up these this whatever it was, the walkway, whatever the heck that thing was that was going around the place.
Yep.
There's one scene, just quickly, when they're showing the people running. There's a poor couple that are walking. Like, I don't know why they're walking, but it's so weird. There's two people that are just taking their time walking up that area. And if you get a chance, go back and watch it. It's very odd. They're not in a hurry. Like, they're just kind of like, whatever, we'll get there when we get there. But I thought it was odd. Okay. So we talked about the hang on moment. They drop the ladders, and then we get to, finally Omega being rescued by Hunter. Thankfully, we wouldn't have expected him not to do that. And this is where I thought the music again was really great. And then we get the wiping out of Lower Pabu, which was pretty devastating, right? The fact that it was, not only was it the initial crash, but then they kind of made an effort to show you that as the water then receded or kind of reset, it pulled and sucked everything back out into the ocean. So, this thing is gone. And I don't know how many people, it looked pretty, from the scale of things, when they had that moment when she said, oh, it's getting nighttime, get ready. This is, and all the lights kind of came on. We had that little nice visual splendor that was happening.
Very popular.
It does feel like, it feels like there's a lot of people, like thousands of people that potentially are displaced now. So where are they going to live? I'm going to guess on the upper area, which is part of the whole, ending piece of this, where they talk about how they're going to have to rebuild, and it's going to take a few years to do so. But it's a pretty big devastation, pretty big loss for them by the time this thing wraps up.
Yeah, it really is. But it goes to I think the culture of what they've, fomented at Pabu. Of they take care of one another. This is not anything new. Anytime someone new shows up, they have to take them in anyway. They don't have a place, and if it's full of refugees, yeah, it hurts. It's painful. We experience that loss, but this is what we do. We pick each other up. We rebuild. We're better than we were before. And this is life on Pabu. We accept it. We like being here. But you're right. The imagery was striking, though, especially when they pull back and show you the whole island again. And it's basically still beautiful, halfway up, but the rest of it is brown and destroyed and otherwise in disrepair. And so it was just sad, but it's also striking just to see that before, and then you get the after a little bit later on. But again, then all the more reason for the Bad Batch to, give them an opportunity of saying, we can help. We can help, speed some of that along. I mean, just Wrecker alone being able to carry supplies and where they're going to get supplies and stuff is the questions I have is all the logistics side of things. But
right.
But again, they can help rebuild, and they can help, put this community on their backs and say, hey, let us put our skills to use. Let us put our abilities to use to help give you something back. You've given us so much, even within just a day or a few hours, and it's mutually beneficial. And they finally have that mutually beneficial relationship, something they can both benefit from mutually, to paraphrase Hunter. See, Hunter's wisdom is not lost on me.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's just you finally have a really symbiotic type of relationship of they have a need, you have something, you have a skill you can offer, and they'll give you something in return, and they are rewarded from it in that kind of way. Everyone's a winner. There's no losers in this case, as long as the Empire doesn't show up, I guess. And so a lot of opportunity there. So it feels like something that finally works for them, in a lot of different ways. And Tech is on board right away. He's like, I had the same idea. I mean, they've got a ship. I mean, they've got a place to stay and all that good stuff. That's still their home, but it's still good. I mean, it's nice that they have, they would be wanted, but also they would feel like, hey, we can actually maybe consider this at least a temporary home for a while.
Yeah. Right.
Kind of try it out.
Where they go. Yep. So I think we've pretty much covered all of the final thought questions that I had here. I think we've kind of woven them into the natural discussion that we've had. To kind of come back to the time jump, they kind of left it off as saying, hey, it's going to take a few years. And, Shep says, you're more than welcome to stay as long as you'd like. Any thoughts around, do you think we're going to get a time jump? Because the next episode is called Tipping Point. It's just followed up by The Summit and Plan 99. Those two episodes, again, just as a reminder, will be aired together on April 2nd. So 3 episodes left. We don't know how long those episodes are going to be. They're probably going to be around that same range. We haven't really,
not really deviated.
We've not deviated from the 25 to 28 minute mark.
Yeah, this show has been pretty rock solid with this roughly half an hour type of show. Yeah.
So what do you think, though? Are we going to get I guess, number one, are we going to get a time jump? Either way, what about Tipping Point? Where do you kind of feel like that's going to go?
It kind of feels like, yes, we will have a bit of a time jump, but how much? And I'm worried. I mean, if there's a time jump, then, oh man, what kind of trouble is Crosshair in? What has the Empire had time to do? Not only for him to recover, but also then to whatever it is their plan for him is with Dr. Hemlock. And so you almost don't want too much time to pass, because then it becomes all that much more difficult of how do we, when they do come across Crosshair, which presumably they will, because I think you and I both agree, all roads lead back to Tantus at some point. They will go there. And the titles of the episode seem to suggest that, especially the second to last one. So, I mean, but I don't know how much time. I mean, for a few weeks or maybe even a few months to go by, I think that's pretty reasonable. And I think that's actually pretty, what I would generally expect. For what, a whole year or 2 years or something go by, that seems like that would be a lot within the context of the season all of a sudden. But does it really change anything or is that a bad thing? No, it just changes the landscape a lot more than what we had. So I'm going to go on the limb. I'll go on a limb and say it's, they'll be here maybe a month or a few months before, when this next episode picks up, or this next episode just kind of ignores them altogether, goes back to something else. I don't know if that's Crosshair or whatever, but I have a feeling in the next episode, they will come back here and they'll be given that call to action again. They being the remaining Bad Batch team. Right.
Yeah.
So, but again, I think, probably no more than a few months is my guess. What about you?
Well, I would say, yeah, I actually would enjoy a time jump of some sort. I don't want it to be too far, but months seems fine and appropriate. Weeks is just as good.
Yeah.
I don't know about days. But either way, I would be okay with it, I guess is what I'm saying. As far as what the tipping point is, this is where I've really been kind of stewing over for quite a while now. We've got a couple different, I mean, the tipping, so on the surface, face value, tipping point, meaning someone is just fed up with something and it's pushing them to do something that either they've been putting off and avoiding or something we weren't expecting. Okay. And that's how I'm defining it anyways. So a couple characters and things that fit into this. Number one, it could be Sid, right? Something has finally pushed her to the, maybe it's this thing, or the fact that months have passed and she lashes out at them and turns them over to the Empire. Now, I don't know what that means because, again, they don't know, or she doesn't know where they are, or she double crosses them at some point. She gets them to kind of do something and she double crosses them and turns them over to the Empire. But the tipping point for Sid being, we had a contract and you've completely ignored this and you've pushed me too far and suddenly I'm going to take action. This plays into the foreshadowing that was, I forget the character name, but the one that warned us in, I think it was Speed, the episode, right? That at some point she was going to, yeah. So it could feed into that. Maybe it's Nala Se. Nala Se is under duress. They've got her kidnapped. Maybe there's something that finally pushes her to the point where she feels like she does or says something there. I haven't really thought that one through. I think the one that is probably more intriguing for me though is the Bad Batch have for the most part have been running from the Empire. Like they've been purposely ignoring, staying away from that fight. Right? They've been running these side missions. They know the galaxy's a crappy place right now. And there's people like, Rex and Echo and potentially Cody that are out there fighting the good fight. But these guys, with as much as skilled as they are, with everything they bring to the table, have purposely ignored a lot of it. They've made the decision not, and I'm not calling them cowards. It makes sense, but they've chosen not to be a part of this battle. In one of the episodes earlier, I guess it was the one where on Tantus, and they said, they talked about Omega, right? We know that she's got a target on her back. And so if they target Omega and they kidnap her or put her in danger, to me, the tipping point, that could be the tipping point for Hunter to say, the gloves are coming off. Like we're engaging in this war now because they've made it very personal. And the tipping point mean, again, that they are going to finally confront the Empire, whatever that means. And so this would be a way to kind of bring back Rex and Echo and maybe Cody. You got the Bad Batch. And yeah, they're all, their goals, or I guess their objectives, are probably self-centered or at least selfish in that they want to rescue Omega. But I think it would speak to them finally getting back to fighting as soldiers and knowing that they've got to take care of this before they can even think about going back to Pabu or being in some kind of position, because they're always going to have that target on their back, I guess is where I'm thinking.
Where I started going with this was more Echo and Rex callback. And so if I remember last time we had even heard them reference, it was because they wanted to send them the data on the Zillow Beast, on the cloning efforts, what they were trying to do, what it could possibly mean. Because even the limited information tech got was, wow, this could be huge. This is a really big deal. And Hunter didn't know what to do. He's like, send it to Rex and Echo, see what they can figure out, see what it means to them. So I have a feeling they call and they tell them just how bad it really is, or they found something out, whether this is the Death Star or whether it's something like that, whatever it might be, it's something really bad and they need to make a choice. And I think to your point, like the definition of tipping point, it can mean all the things you had said, or it's basically you are confronted with a decision you need to make that will potentially decide your fate longer term. Right. And I think that's generally how it's being applied in this series. But again, it's probably going to mean several different things for several different characters at that point. But I'm starting to think it's Rex and Echo calling saying, hey, things are really, really bad, like really bad. And we desperately need y'all's help. And they're going to have to make a choice about whether they get involved and really commit to it, or are they going to keep, like you said, not cowardice, but kind of meeting their own needs of what they need. And again, their focus was to try to keep Omega safe and find a path forward for her, but she's entwined in all of this. And again, like you said, we know the Empire now is aware of who she is, aware of potentially whatever importance there is to her, besides getting Nala Se to further her research and needing motivation to do so. So those things will come about and will force their hand on some level. But I'm really curious, though. It'd be interesting to see how they actually go about doing it. But I think definitely it has something to do with Rex and Echo.
What about Crosshair in this scenario too? Like, what would his tipping point be? It feels like he's already hit it, right? I mean, he had his tipping point where he turned against the Empire, but I can't think of anything else that he would do other than.
Well, he's in a tough spot too now, because now are his choices his own at this point? I mean, he's going to be another experimental, lab bunny at this point for
Right.
Dr. Hemlock. So yeah, I agree. He kind of already had that tipping point, but what does it mean now? Does he even have his own way of thinking? Does he have to go through it all over again in some way? So it's really tough to say. It's Crosshair, and again, maybe we, like you said, maybe we bring a Cody into it. We understand what the tipping point was for Cody. We know what it was. We get confirmation, and then we see that he's lined up with Rex and Echo now, which would make a ton of sense actually. And so who knows? I'd love for Crosshair to come back into it, but I have a feeling that we're just going to come across Crosshair when we get to that 15th episode. I'm curious if we'll see him at all, and they'll just kind of save that for that 2-part finale.
Yeah, and mysteriously, Rampart has just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
I don't know that he'll come back, but
well, again, he was arrested and kind of hauled off for misappropriation of Empire funds, basically. He basically just accounting prison now or something like that. But so who knows? It seems to have focused more on maybe Dr. Hemlock being the big bad at this point. He's certainly the most threatening Imperial character right now that we have that's accessible to us. So that would exclude like an Emperor Palpatine, of course, or even his Major Domo or whatever. But yeah, so it seems like Dr. Hemlock is the primary accessible bad guy at this point for us to be concerned about.
Yeah, no, I was going down the path of still trying to tease out like who could be at their tipping point.
Oh yeah.
And thinking like with Rampart, he was such a big character, a big player in season 1, season 2, at least at the very beginning. It just disappeared.
I just don't know if we have enough time to kind of go revisit that and have some sort of turnaround on him, do we?
I don't know.
Kind of tough with only 3 episodes left.
Well, yeah, we're out of runway.
Yeah.
Potentially
we have to resolve something this season, right?
We've got an hour and 15 minutes, of showtime left. So, what can you really squeeze in an hour? And again, this is assuming that they're sitting around that 25-minute mark. It could be more, it could be less, but yeah, I don't know. This is a lot to kind of pack in, and they've left a lot of, I think all this bodes well for a season 3. Like I've not heard anything about whether or not there's a season 3. I think I've always said there's probably going to be about 4 seasons. They did that with Rebels. That feels like just enough time to kind of get out there, tell the stories you want to tell, and, kind of close up shop, tie things up. But, they're laying so many foundational things that can extend even well beyond that, right? And we don't know where Omega is. She's such a young person in this series that, they could be, even though that may be the end of the Bad Batch, much like the Bad Batch was the extension of the Clone Wars, there could be another series out there that kind of picks up on her adventures as, the Indiana Jones of Star Wars, and not to take anything away from Afra, but possibilities are aplenty.
Yeah, and everyone would love to have a Rex, Cody, and Echo series too, right? So
yeah, right. How do they get to the planet? How does Rex get to the planet with Wolf and Gregor at some point?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of
Rebels, right? There's a story there. So, and I don't think it has anything to do with Pabu. Maybe it does. Maybe they go to Pabu for a while, and eventually that becomes a hellhole because of the Empire, and then they branch off, and that story to be told of how they leave that utopian place and eventually end up on the middle of a, flat plains, salt infested, or what is it, the shark things or whatever it is. I forget what they call it.
Yeah, it would be sad if Pabu ended up becoming like an early base of operations for, the quote unquote rebellion, only for it to be completely obliterated. And this peaceful society, all of these people who wanted to do liberation activities just didn't care enough and let it. That would be really sad. I hope we don't go that direction.
No, I don't think we will too, but
I regret even saying
my point. No, I would have proved my point though. Like, you don't want the Bad Batch hanging out there. They're just going to bring trouble. It's only a matter of time. So that's what the writers want. Okay. I guess we'll end the show there. It was, again, good episode. I enjoyed it. Not at all what I was expecting, but brilliant storytelling, I think. Visually was a lot of fun to watch. It sets up a lot of the risk and gives us the stakes that I think we need going into the final 3 episodes. Because I don't think if we didn't have this episode, we really only have the characters themselves and what they've done, right? We don't have this promise of greater things for them. They've shown us what good looks like or potentially could look like, and we want that for the characters. And now going into these last 3 episodes, they're primed to take that away from us and really create some good drama, which as sucky as that sounds, I mean, it's going to be I think it's going to be a good payoff for us.
When you have wars in the name of your series, you're bound to, have to break some eggs from time to time.
The series was doomed back in 1977. You're very right.
That's right. Yeah. They plastered that one right up on the front, but good episode. I think this was a good setup, a good breather a bit, but also, like you said, give us hope for the team as well, even if it's longer term, like that they can come back here, or maybe this is something Omega would like to go revisit. Again, it's nice to see it's just possible. And again, giving Phee a bit of a story arc, I think, and giving her a little bit of development. We had talked about this, I think, Miss Sunflower last week, and we had talked about needing more time for some of the characters. Phee is definitely one that we needed something more on. And so I'm glad that we have this to at least give her a bit of that vulnerability to us and open herself up to the team, give them this opportunity as well and see a little bit different side of her. And so I think that was really necessary. I think it was something really needed.
You know what else we need?
Yeah, we need a fantastic set of people that come and join us for the live streams every time we do one of these. We do a couple times a week, Thursdays and Sundays, of course, 9 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Now we have made the switch. Welcome to Daylight Saving. And tonight we had Cube Dude, Steph, Jonathan, Sky, Riley, Neil Sega, Qui-Gon J, Kathy, Gary, Music Train. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. If I missed you, I apologize. We saw a lot of people back there in the background as well. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're listening to this on the podcast, I do invite you to come out and check out the live stream as well, cantinacast.com/YouTube. You can subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications. It'll give you a reminder about half an hour and 15 minutes before we go on air. So you will never miss a live stream. We'd love for you to come online and say hi to us and let us know you're listening so we can give you a shout out on the air as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will be back in a few days to talk about an episode called The Foundling, which I hope that's not a spoiler for anybody, but
it was a spoiler for me.
Oh, was it? Sorry. So no, Carl Weathers came out today, I think, earlier today or yesterday, and announced that he was directing the next episode. The next episode is directed by him. And he revealed the title. So it's out there officially, but it's called The Foundling, which
I thought this week was the Filoni episode.
Yeah, it's part of him too.
Okay. I didn't realize.
He's directing it. Filoni's writing along with Favreau.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So so when Filoni's involved, I'm thinking, okay, we're getting Order 66 or whatever that scene is from the trailer with the Jedi. So I'm pretty excited. I'm like, this is going to be a good episode. I have a really good feeling about this. So But yeah, so we'll be back in a few days to break down The Foundling, and you can let your mind wonder in terms of what The Foundling means, because I think there's a couple of different meanings, especially coming off that last episode now.
If I go and change the episode art for the week and it's The Foundling and it turns out to be something else entirely,
then you blame Carl Weathers, not me.
I'm going to blame Carl Weathers. I'm going to send him a sternly worded email on Twitter.
Right.
Let me down, Carl.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the first time. Okay, we'll see you guys here in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.